playing Little.
Right, hey guys, afternoon. You're tuning into Scream Bros. I'm Jonas.
And I'm Alex.
And today we're talking about House of Cards Season 5. So, a really interesting bunch of episodes actually. I feel like Netflix has done it again with another jaw-dropping season. But what's your initial thoughts towards Season 5? Did it suit your expectations? Were you a bit disappointed?
I wouldn't call it jaw-dropping. I mean, Season 5, like, it started off strong, but the middle part of it I think sagged a little bit. I mean, with the whole journalist side of it, the whole Doug, Leanne, and that CIA guy, the cybersecurity guy, the guy who rigged the election. Like, I think all that part of the season got a little bit muddled. So I think the beginning of the season and the end of the season were the strong points. That's where the pace picked up. It was a lot more entertaining, a lot more engaging. But I think the middle part, I think it just not that I don't like slow pace character development, plot development stuff, but I just think it dragged on a bit too long.
Because I thought from the beginning of the season, we had seen Frank Underwood as an ambitious congressman with only one mission, to attain the presidency. And I think watching House of Cards, I always had the idea that, well, he's eventually going to do it, but what is the show going to do in terms of really confronting the challenges of being a US president? So now that he gets top position, what's he going to do to keep it? What are going to be the unique pressures that are going to be available to him? And how is he going to try and weather through these situations? Do you think that the show has done a great job in terms of showing people what the real challenges of being a US president actually is?
No, because Frank Underwood isn't that type of guy. Like, you see, like, compare it with a show like Designated Survivor, where the main character for that, Tom Kirkman, he's trying his best to be like the best president he can possibly be, even though he was thrust into a situation in which he didn't want to be involved in. Whereas Frank Underwood, like, he doesn't. It's like he uses the power of the office just to further his own agenda and his own legacy, and he goes against everything. Like, I'm not an American. I can't speak for American values, but he goes against everything that democracy and freedom and everything that America stands for. Well, allegedly stands for. But I don't want to get too.
But don't you think that's a great thing about the show, in the sense that if we look at the history of America and the way we see American democracy, we almost see it with rose-tinted glasses. Like, we see it as a model that people, not just in America but around the world, should be trying to emulate. And so do you think it's a good thing that House of Cards does that consistently with Frank Underwood, because it challenges the notion of democracy, and maybe it's not as idealistic and as glamorous as we might think it to be from first glance?
I think because Frank Underwood as a character, he it's like the whole appeal of House of Cards is the politics behind it. It's all pantomime. It's all putting on a show, putting on a facade, which is what Frank and Claire do for the 5 seasons. Who they are in front of the cameras and in front of the public is completely different to how they are behind closed doors.
Yeah.
Like, they're both scheming, manipulative, domineering. Like, they're just horrible people.
Yeah.
But you root for them as an audience member.
Yeah.
Which is quite unsettling, because like if they were real politicians in the real world, like, you wouldn't you would look at them and see they're distrustful, they're corrupt, they're everything that you don't like about politicians. That's basically what Frank and Claire Underwood are. So,
do you think that's a commentary towards people and our fascination with politics, that we can sometimes be, in a way, misled by the ambitions of really, really suspicious people? So if we look back at history, for instance, we've always been, I think history doesn't look too well on people like Hitler and Stalin, for instance, but there is that fascination that these are really ambitious people with one vision that they want to implement, and regardless of, our moral leanings and our perspectives on what happened, because let's be honest, these people were bad people, but the fact that they had a vision and they were ambitious and would do anything, just about anything, to achieve that end. Do you think House of Cards' depiction of Underwood has something to say there in terms of maybe the masses, us people in general, can sometimes be susceptible to the ambitions of people like Underwood.
Yeah, I think like the general public can be easily misled. I mean, you look at last year with the EU referendum and the Brexit campaign, how a portion of the public were misled about the money that's going to be given to the NHS, £350 million a week. I mean, the Leave campaign had their campaign was still in a bunch of lies. I mean, even
and by the way, guys, this is not a reflection of our political views, just putting it out there. We don't want to seem like it's propaganda for anything.
No, it's a statement of fact. Like, most of the facts that the Leave campaign were campaigning on were lies. Like, just Google it and you can find for yourself. But the public, because like, if you like what I've seen from the past like 2 to 3 years observing real world politics is that if you run a campaign based on hope and basically trying to appeal to a certain demographic, a certain portion of the electorate, you can sell them anything. As long as it depends on how you position it, and it depends if that resonates with people and their existing frustrations. So, with someone like Frank Underwood, I think he's a person that I wouldn't say he's necessarily in tune with the populace of America in the fictional Universal House on Cards, but I think he understands how to like try and appeal to what things their average American person wants in their life, like with his AmWorks program about getting Americans into work and everything.
Yeah.
So I think that's what he tries to go for.
So would you say then that House of Cards is, for example, a commentary on populism, and that populism may have some dark undertones towards it, especially when you have a leader?
I don't think there wasn't any essence. There wasn't anything related to populism in that season. I don't think. Even with the election in season 4 and season 5, there wasn't really anything in there that relate. That you can see parallels between Trump's populism or Bernie Sanders' populism or Corbyn's populism. It wasn't really that prevalent in either Underwood's or Conway's campaign. So I wouldn't draw that parallel. What do you think, though?
I mean, I wouldn't say it's directly commentating on populism, but I think it's rather questioning the notion that we have on democracy and maybe exposing that democracy isn't maybe the idealistic mode for politics that we actually usually have opinions on. Because I think what's interesting with Underwood is that this is a guy who, on paper, we should have every reason to hate. I mean, this is a guy who kills dogs, likes to push people on trains, so he's not really the type of character you'd want to have a pint with in the pub. But I think Kevin Spacey has this charismatic way of depicting Underwood that you just can't help root for him. And I think the fact that we root for him maybe should tell us something about our attitude towards politicians. That maybe a politician, if he has a bit of charisma and a bit of sway about him, that people do gravitate towards him. And I think what might be dangerous is that, fair enough, you have people like the Obamas, for instance, who, back in 2008, came about with a great vision, great soundbite with the whole mantra of change, but could actually be charismatic and speak with a certain type of lingo that people could resonate with. But then if you juxtapose that with a more cynical version of someone from history, for example, someone like Hitler, in essence, he had that very same narrative, the whole mantra of change and ambition and whatnot. But obviously, with hindsight, and we see what happens to Germany later on, maybe there's something about populism that maybe we should be looking at a little bit more, and that House of Cards is maybe trying to sort of talk about.
I don't think there's populism in House of Cards, though.
Would you not say that, especially with his whole mantra of, for example, America works in season 4? Because that was
no, because I think the main crux of season 5 was he wanted to incite. He wanted to like, because you know towards the end of season 4 when he beheaded that, who was it? That terrorist, I can't remember his name. They beheaded him at the end of season 4. So Underwood just wanted to push the narrative that we're a nation at war with ICO.
Yeah.
So he was. I don't know if you would call that populism.
Yeah.
But because he himself was breeding the fear and the anger in the general public that ICOs are a real threat and they need to fight them. It's not something that was already there. And because populism is where you take advantage of a grievance that's already there. in
But
society.
I guess
he was creating that so he can benefit off it.
But I guess you could point to real world examples in history of where politicians have taken advantage of certain populist moods that have been within the general environment. So an example here would be George W. Bush and 9/11. And what was interesting about 9/11 was that 9/11, the act itself, pretty much galvanized people from across American society that we are indeed a nation at war and we do need to take the fight to terrorism, not just in America but across the world. I mean, that had a huge implication for the 2004 election, for instance. So I guess with that, you could make the argument that maybe populism does seem to influence the way politicians do act, but I mean, it's still something we could think about. But I want to talk specifically about Claire Underwood. So what are your thoughts towards Robin Wright's performance as Claire Underwood? Because personally, I thought she played a very big and interesting role this season.
To me, she's my favourite character in the show.
Mm.
Because I root for her more because Frank, he tries to see her as an equal, but he can't help but like think that she's there to help him.
Yeah.
And she needs to be loyal to him and do what he says. But her in her own self, I think she's a better operator than Frank is, because Frank has a habit of rubbing everyone the wrong way.
Yeah.
Whereas Claire can manipulate someone but still get them to work within their self-interest.
Yeah.
But Frank Underwood can't do that.
Yeah, I often found with Frank Underwood, as charming and as suave as he is, he does come across as sometimes a bit monotone because we only just see him as the Machiavellian politician who wants to do anything to attain power. But with what I got with Claire Underwood is that there is something more underneath the mask, and that this is a woman who, despite being ambitious in her own right, does have her own views towards things. And in many times throughout her political career, she's had to sacrifice her own dreams and ambitions at the expense of Frank Underwood. So, do you think that her character development this season was really great in terms of pushing her towards the presidency, or do you think that was a bad move by the show?
I don't think it was a bad move. I just think if you kept Frank as president, I mean, I like it when shows change the dynamic, so things are different, so things can play out differently as well.
Yeah.
Like with, I know you don't watch it, but Orange is the New Black, this season, like the whole season took the course of a 3-day riot in the prison. So there was no rules, there was no guards, there was nothing. Everything was just all chaos, and it was good because after 4 seasons, it's a refreshing change. You see a new dynamic. So at the end of season 5 of House of Cards, you see Claire in the position that she's actually president, not acting president like she was earlier. So it changed the dynamic because now Frank is out of politics, he's out of the White House, but Claire is in power. So now you've got a new dynamic. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays moving forward.
Yeah, particularly as well because I always had the impression as well that Frank even saw Claire as a servant, and so her interest would come second place towards Frank's overall interest, which was to obviously become president and to leave a legacy. So I think it will be interesting to see how Claire conducts herself, because towards the end of the season we do get a slight indication that she is trying to fit into her own shoes and maybe leave a mark on her own terms as a person. Because even if you look at promotional material for season 5 of House of Cards, you do get the impression that this is going to be a team effort between Frank and Claire. I mean, he makes it very clear when he states that one nation Underwood. But I think that takes on a new dimension when we see her actually become president, because it seems like maybe she's not willing to have Frank around the scene anymore. So, do you think that's going to be interesting to look at season 6? Do you think that's going to affect the dynamic? So
yeah, because like towards the end of the season, Frank put as a condition for him to resign that Claire as president would pardon him. But she doesn't do that at the end.
Yeah.
So there, Frank is like, what do I do now? Because he was kind of hinging on that pardon so he can do what he needs to be done outside the White House. Because towards the end, you remember he gets like an epiphany that I don't need to be in the White House to have power and to be influential. I can do it out behind the scenes as well.
Yeah.
But he can't operate like that. He can't operate like that anymore because Claire hasn't pardoned him. Yeah. So it even goes to show that now Frank thought he can control Claire, but he can't.
Yeah.
Because he expected her to do as he said, but she didn't.
And in many ways, it's sort of it fits perfectly with the title of the show, because if you look at the title House of Cards, it suggests the fragility of exactly what Frank is trying to create in terms of his presidential legacy. And if you think of any political empire in history, you're only one bad scenario away from crashing down and crumbling like a house of cards, basically. So I think it's kind of nice how the series sort of nods to the title in the sense that, you know, as strong and as stable as Frank Underwood thought he was in the beginning of the season, he was more than one dodgy scenario away from losing the presidency, which in many ways actually happened. So, do you think, in that sense, that this is the end of Frank Underwood as we know, or do you think he's probably going to bounce back from this?
No, he's not going to be president again. There's no way that's happening.
Or do you think he's going to seek to become the power behind the throne?
Yeah, he's going to try and be the power behind the scenes, like how Raymond Tusk was in season 2. How, even though he's not in politics, he wasn't president, he was influential in Garrett Walker's administration. So I think that's kind of what he wants. I think that's kind of the route he's going to go for.
Yeah. Do you think that will be a major deviation from his character, though, especially because we get the idea very early on that this is a man intent on building a legacy for himself, and so the idea of operating behind the shadows in regards to in the public eye.
He didn't really mention his legacy that much this season. It was something he mentioned a lot before.
Yeah.
But he wasn't mentioning it as much this season. So I'm thinking, have the showrunners forgotten that?
Yeah.
Or because the showrunners have changed.
Yeah.
Like I think since season 3, season 4, and season 5 are different showrunners. So I don't know whether that's a thing anymore or that they abandoned it altogether.
Yeah.
Like it's interesting to see what the end game of the season is. This series is, because I don't see it lasting. Now that Frank is not president, obviously it's gonna be Claire's turn. I don't know how long it's gonna last.
Yeah.
Maybe probably till season 7, 8.
Yeah. Because I remember Frank pointing out very early in season 1 that power is the stone building that lasts for centuries, basically. And so that idea that he wants people to remember him, he wants to last throughout the age, essentially. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how he can reconcile that with not being president, because president is essentially the highest office in the land.
He'll be remembered because he was nearly going to be impeached, but he resigned before he could be impeached.
So remembered for all the wrong reasons, do you reckon?
Yeah, like Nixon.
Yeah, that's a fair point. But one thing I also wanted to talk about as well is that I feel like we did have to talk about it, but I think I want to put it out there as well. But Claire's breaking of the 4-4, I think for me that was a big moment in the show, because throughout most of the show we always see things from Frank's perspective. So whenever Frank wants to talk about his emotions towards the audience, it's just him. And whereas we've had subtle moments where it suggests that Claire is also part of this whole breaking the 4-4 experience, it really comes full force towards the end of the season. But do you think that was a bold move by the show, actually doing that? What's your opinion on the issue?
I didn't mind it at the very last scene when she says my turn, because I thought that was a great character moment, saying that Claire has arrived now, this is her turn to shine. It's only the bit before that, I think it was like episode 9 or 10, where she looks at the camera and says, "Oh, I know you've been there all along."
Yeah.
Because to me, that just came out of nowhere, and it was really jarring.
Yeah.
It's just like, why until now did she decide to talk to the camera, talk to the audience?
Yeah.
It just made no narrative sense. Why it happened at that moment?
I feel like just in general, her breaking the 4-4 is interesting because we get to really see the idea that Claire is now Frank's equal. Because throughout the beginning of the show, actually, I think the use of the 4-4 was kind of used to reinforce this idea that we are looking at the world through Frank's eyes, and therefore everyone else in the show are his pawns, even his wife. And so I think through her breaking the 4-4, it's basically the realization that, listen, Claire's not just a pawn like everyone else. She's her own she's a master manipulator in her own right. And so I have mixed feelings like you do. I think I'm more leaning towards the side that it was a good move. But do you think that will be something that we'll see a lot more often next season, particularly with her being president?
It better, because otherwise, what's the point of it?
Yeah.
If they don't, then it's like you just did it for shock value. But if you did have her speak more to the camera, then it's like, then it makes more narrative sense, because like now because she's in a position of power, it's like she's kind of taking over Frank's role in the show in a way.
Yeah.
But like I said, at the very end of the season, I liked it, but the bit before that, to me, it just seemed out of place and jarring. Like, she didn't need to be. Like, I think you could have taken that out, and it wouldn't have affected the season as a whole.
Yeah, so that was our look at House of Cards. So we hope you enjoyed it. We always look for new ideas, so don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Don't be afraid to leave a couple comments as well in regards to more material that you want to talk about, whether it's your favourite TV show, your favourite movie that you want us to talk about and go through. Feel free to do so. But until then, I am Jonas.
I'm Alex, and we'll see you next time.
On Screen Brothers. Take care of yourself.